Hi, I'm Andrew Burke. I'm a professor in the Department of English at the University of Winnipeg, and I'm here with
Clint Enns, and I'm a writer, scholar from Winnipeg, but living in Montreal.
Dave Barber is the legendary programmer for the Winnipeg Film Group Cinematheque. By the end of his career, he was the senior programmer for it, but he was there for the duration of it, straight back to 1982.
Yeah, when it was founded.
And he had an enormous influence on Winnipeg filmmaking, on Canadian film, at least in part because of the things that he programmed, but also because he was just an incredibly generous man who had an open heart and an open mind towards filmmakers and the boldest of filmmaking in Canada.
Yeah, and that's part of that is due to the fact that the Winnipeg Film Group was above and below the theater at that time. So it's like it was connected to an artist-run center, which means he really understood filmmakers. Filmmakers were always hanging around, which is unlike other film programmers, which program without actually surrounding themselves with the real working filmmakers, not just celebrity filmmakers.
What we have done is that we've put together an edited collection called Scrapbook from the archives of Dave Barber. And the way that we put together this edited collection was that after Dave's passing, the Winnipeg Film Group inherited from his family 47 boxes of material, and they were jam-packed with material. Can you say sort of the experience of opening the boxes the first time?
Yeah, I was like, there is no order to this madness, and I felt overwhelmed looking at this material because it was like, notes on what Dave had for breakfast, and then next to that was like the bylaws of the Winnipeg Film Group.
Dave was an incredible collector, and he was also, I would say, through all of his career, he viewed himself as the unofficial archivist of the film group. He knew that if he didn't save material, it was at real risk of being thrown out. So what he did was save it. He first saved it in his desk and his filing cabinets, then he commandeered some rooms here, both at the old location, but then at this location to store the stuff in. And then when they got kicked out of that rooms, he took it home. He took it to his apartment. So when David Knipe and James Admonson, after Dave's passing, went to Dave's apartment, what they discovered was a treasure trove of material relating to the history of the Winnipeg Film Group. His family was kind enough to donate that material to the film group. It was brought here, and then Clint and I were invited in to look through it, see what was in there, and we knew immediately that there was a book in there. And I think it was Clint, maybe even more than me, who had a vision for what the book needed to be. Based on the boxes.
It wasn't just like the Winnipeg Film Group. It was Dave.
It was Dave.
It was his earliest writings from when he was, a teenager, to his writing about folk music and sending of letters to Warner Brothers and his rejection letters from the Rolling Stone magazine and so it was like, not within this, there was a history of the Winnipeg Film Group, but there was also a history of Dave. And we discovered Dave was very multifaceted.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, he was a huge film fan. He was a huge folk music fan. But then he was also just interested in life in general. Ultimately, we came to view the boxes almost... Clint doesn't like this comparison. We viewed the boxes as Dave's arcades project. Like he was a Benjamin.
A little too highbrow.
But you know what I mean. Sort of like this was an incredible kind of cache of material that was not only a history of Dave and history of the film group, as Clint says, but also in some ways a history of Winnipeg as well.
Yeah,
and it was
100%.
really interesting to go through because we had this multiple decades from 70s to the present day, which is this kind of capsule history through scraps and fragments and everything else of this kind of rich history of place, people, and of the organization. So sort of confronted with this massive material, we had to come up with some way to organize it. So eventually we decided to organize the book, which we always wanted to be a heavily illustrated book with images of the things that were in the boxes.
And the material directly from the boxes, without with tiny bits of annotations, but
absolutely
not too much guidance either,
Yeah.
other than like setting out the chapters.
So it's like you want the readers to have something akin to the experience that you guys would have had when you first encountered
100%, with a tiny bit more organization. So if each one of those boxes was a box dedicated to a portion of Dave, that's what we wanted people to experience.
The whole time, like the logic was, we want to stay true to the boxes. We want it to stay true to the archive. We want to give it some kind of order. We want to contextualize it a little bit for people who didn't know Dave, who don't know the film group necessarily all that well, but who will come through the material that we've sort of filter down into the book to get a sense of the film group's importance, but also Dave's importance as a programmer. And we wanted to include, Dave wrote a lot, as Clint said, and we think that there's several writings, essays that Dave wrote in the 80s and 90s and into the 2000s that are central to any understanding of Canadian independent cinema.
Charlie Chaplin and
Groucho Marx
meeting at the Windsor Hotel. That was through Dave's research that story came out.
It's become a general part of Winnipeg mythology.
And folklore.
But it was Dave's original research and publications in the now defunct Winnipeg magazine.
And so you have that next to travel, I don't know, to some said country that has sun, like on a sailboat or whatnot. But September 1982, Dave sees Cinematheque programmer wanted, and which we found.
Yeah.
We found the ad that he responded to, and he somehow kept a draft of his cover letter, which is kind of like in the book. Yeah, very charming.
Yeah.
And so not only do we have the ad, but we also have his cover letter, and we have the response that the Cinematheque gave him, and then. But he was like kind of
the greatest tribute to what an archivist he was.
Yeah. And
order.
Is there a difference?
I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to say. But
every good archivist is a bad hoarder.
Yeah. I mean, whatever.
They're good at hoarding, but it's a bad habit.
However we want to classify it, I mean, we're immensely grateful, and it is kind of like a gift, sort of, that Dave has given us.
And the chapters are like hilarious. It captures, like, we talk about Dave as a programmer, but it captures more than that. Like, it captures the essence of Dave. You read it, and there's a section called like Dave Barber, surrealist. Yeah. And so it's just like his you can see within that his obsessions.
Yeah. His obsessions, his passions, but then also sort of like
his sense of humor,
his deep commitments, his kind of like generosity, and his friendships as well are all in there.
For those of us outside of Winnipeg, one of the ways we got to know Dave was through his many appearances in Winnipeg films.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
As a kind of not just a local character of note, but a kind of folk hero of Winnipeg film culture. Could you talk a little bit about that side of Dave's investment in the scene and in the makers that have sprung up around, the kind of film culture that he was, I don't want to necessarily say responsible for, because no one works in a vacuum completely,
sure.
But that he had really done a great deal to feed.
Well, like, because Dave gave so much to the filmmakers, lots of filmmakers want to give a lot back to Dave. And this is like talking, like, Dave was programming, and he had like good intuition and other things like that, and would program films that would eventually take on like cult status in Canada when nobody else would give them a chance. And Dave was like the first person to program those works. And he'd also really liked like early works by filmmakers, like genuinely. And so would program those works, which a lot of other programmers won't do, which made Dave very special. So you have filmmakers that now have are sort of like weirdly indebted to Dave because he gave them their first opportunities, but also
and just also encouragement, frankly.
and that
sort
too,
of
yeah.
to have your film appear on a program is a big deal, and to have that kind of encouragement from a programmer of Dave's stature was a big deal as well. We tried to frame Dave as he was very much a facilitator. He was a facilitator of film culture here in Winnipeg, and very often, very literally, his desk was at the center of things. But I think also there's a way in which he was at the center of things in a more figurative or metaphorical way as well, just in the sense of like we even have a chapter called Dave Barber Icon, and he was an icon within Winnipeg cinematic circles, but then also Canadian and increasingly international, because I think there's a way not only from the documentary that he co-directed with Kevin Nicol,
Tales of the Winnipeg Film Group.
Tales from the Winnipeg Film Group, but also the film that he made himself with the real Dave Barber, Please Stand Up. There was a real sense of him as a kind of canny curator and sort of smart programmer, but then also as a very talented writer and filmmaker himself.
He was also, you got to remember, these
He's
are low
funny
budget.
as hell.
He's funny as hell, but these are low budget films. So all of
Yeah.
a sudden you need somebody. Dave's willing to do anything.
Yeah.
as well, for the love of cinema.
As I think Barber Gulrub
Gulrub by Matthew Rankin demonstrates. Like Dave was there to save the day. You need me to do this?
Yeah.
I'm in. And so these are like low budget, and it's kind of nice when you can just go to the Winnipeg Film Group and there's somebody sitting there ready to, like at the ready to fill in for whoever was missing that day.
Absolutely. Near the end of his life, he did want to write sort of his history of the Winnipeg Film Group and sort of like his kind of advice to programmers, sort of.
And he had a methodology, like a very distinct methodology, that which he comes out in various writings through of how to program films. And how to advertise films, and in particular, how do we get an audience for these films? That's more difficult than actually playing the film. Is making sure that there's like actually somebody in the theater to watch them. And Dave was like really invested in this and thinking about it all the time.
And he also had an ethic as well, in the sense
50%
of Canadian content.
Canadian content.
Committed to Canadian content, but then also understood that the Cinematheque was part of the Winnipeg Film Group. Part of its mandate was to show films made by filmmakers who were working with the Winnipeg Film Group. And that was an incredible boon to Winnipeg filmmakers to have a regular outlet for the screening of their films, right? It's just an incredible thing.
And as a maker here, I remember really like getting to hear sound design in the theater.
Yeah.
Which is like a big deal. So you like before it hits the world, it would always play here first, and then you could like make those minor adjustments that need to be done, seeing it on a big screen and seeing it with properly in the theater.
We have a legacy of Dave sort of in several filmmakers who come from Winnipeg and have gone on in the world or have stayed here and continue making films. Both apply. But then also I think that Dave has been an influence on programmers across the country as well, or programmers who have worked here and have gone on to program elsewhere as well. I think there's a real kind of like subterranean Dave programming ethic that sort of is out there that isn't always named but is always respected by those people who work for him and have gone on to do other things.